dangers of dieting. The short-term wins they've had on that diet, whether it's the intermittent fasting or the keto or whatever it is, trust me, the research shows that they're going to put the weight back on, sadly, and they're going to end up in a worse off position than what they were before they started the diet.
Hello and welcome to Move Conversations. In this episode, we talk to Dr. Nick Fuller, the leading obesity expert at the University of Sydney and founder of Interval Weight Loss. Dr. Fuller is also the author of 3 best-selling books, and his work has been published in top-ranking medical journals, including JAMA, Lancet, American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, and so on. Dr. Fuller, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Venkat. And it's a pleasure to be on your Conversations platform. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So let's begin with the top of the mind questions people have. Why don't diets work?
Well, this is the question, I guess, us as scientists and clinicians are researching and investigating all of the time, because we've been talking about diets now for the better part of 5 decades, since the 1970s. But when you look at the problem we have, overweight and obesity is not slowing down. If anything, it's just increasing globally. And diets have only contributed to the very problem they proclaim to solve. And we've found from our research, it's not due to that lack of willpower. It's not due to what the dieting industry keep telling us and wanting us to believe. It's actually due to our body's physiology and the changes that take place within our body when we lose weight. And this is an important part of that education that we need to be able to get out to the population so that they do stop dieting. Because when you sign up to that diet, yes, you're going to lose weight, but long term, you're going to end up in a worse off position. And just to highlight this question, with a very good bit of research, the clever scientists actually looked at twins and followed twins up, sets of twins, over a 25-year interval. And what they found from that research was the twin that had been dieting over their lifetime was always heavier than the twin that had never dieted. So we've got some very good research to show now that dieting is only driving your weight up over time. And the message needs to be to stop dieting, stop fad diets, because they're doing more harm than good.
That's a very interesting research. So is calories in, calories out a myth?
It is. It's far more complicated than that. Our body is far too smart. And when you deprive yourself of calories, your body shuts down. So typically with diets, or these 4, 8, 12-week diet programs that we sign up to and follow, they prescribe a cute, neatly packaged program telling us how many calories to have. And what they're doing is getting us to deprive ourselves, getting us to cut down our calories so that we put less energy in than what we're burning, and consequently getting into an energy deficit so that we lose weight, and we lose weight quick. But what we've found is when you actually deprive yourself and put a few calories into your body and you're in the energy deficit, your body starts to work differently. And this is one of these biological mechanisms or biological protections that kick into gear when you start dieting. And it's our metabolism. And what it does is it shuts down. You start burning less calories at rest. Consequently, if you're burning less calories at rest, it's going to make it harder to continue to lose weight. But more importantly, it's going to mean your body starts to put that weight back on that you lost. So the whole calories in versus calories out equation that you allude to is nonsense. And the other thing is a lot of these calorie calculators that we use are very inaccurate. Research has shown that there can be 20 to 40% error in a lot of these foods that are calculated in these apps that we're using. And also a lot of the
huge,
calories,
right?
It's huge. And a lot of the calories that are in foods are not absorbed in the body. So not all calories are equal. A good example is nuts. About 20% of the calories in nuts are not digested. and they're a very nutritious and healthy food, and foods that we should be putting more of into our body, but we steer clear of these foods because we think they're bad because they're high in calories, at least what the label says. So when it comes down to it, calories in versus calories out is a waste of time. Our body is far too smart, and it's far too complicated. And the messaging needs to stop around eat less, move more, because your body will shut down. These biological mechanisms will kick into gear, and you'll start to burn less energy at rest, and you'll start to regain the weight you lost. Remember, your body's physiology is going to be changing when you lose weight.
Right. So that brings me to the question, what is interval weight loss, your program?
So a big part of our research is obviously investigating what happens within a person's body when you lose weight. Now, we know that, some diets are unsustainable. They tell you to cut out certain foods and food groups. And sure, we go back to our old ways. We reintroduce those foods we cut out. And that's one reason why we put the weight back on. But the second big part of that is, remember, our body's physiology is changing. That's the real reason we're putting weight back on. Our metabolism slowing down. Our appetite hormones are changing, telling us to eat more. Our adrenal gland is pumping out more cortisol. Our thyroid gland stops producing the thyroid hormones. Basically, your body's going into shutdown mode. So what we want to do is switch off these biological protections, which is where another part of our research comes into play, and the translational program known as interval weight loss. Because we want to be able to help people long term. We're not interested in the 10 kilo short-term weight loss where you lose 10 kilos and put 11 back on just as quick. We're interested in getting people to lose 5, 10 kilos and keeping it off forever. And the way we've found, the effective way of actually shutting down our body's physiology is getting people to lose weight in small increments every second month. And this is where interval weight loss comes into play. It's actually getting a person to lose just a couple of kilos over the course of a month, and then getting them to maintain the weight loss in the next month before then going on and losing weight again, another couple of kilos, and then maintaining, losing. So it looks like a step down pyramid approach. So it's a loss followed by a maintenance, loss followed by maintenance. And what we've found is when you maintain your weight every second month, you prevent your body's physiology coming into play. You prevent the metabolism decreasing. You prevent the appetite hormones going up, telling you to eat more. You prevent your body shifting from fat to carbohydrate use. You prevent that shutting down. And if you can prevent that, you're going to be able to lose weight and keep it off. And then with the randomized controlled trials, where we're getting the 10 to 12 kilo weight loss over the course of a year, roughly the 2 kilos every second month, as opposed to the traditional diets where you get 10 or 12 kilos in 3 to 6 months, and then you put that weight back on just as quickly over the next 6 to 12 months. So we're preventing that U or V-shaped response by getting people to lose weight slow and steady with a step-down approach.
That helps us to understand the science behind the interval loss program. You also say that in your book that, our body will always work to protect its current weight, which is its set point. You use a phrase called set point. So what is set point? I guess you alluded to in your answer to the previous question, but could you elaborate specifically on what is the set point part of?
Definitely. This is an very interesting question. Because this is what we're seeing is going up over time. Now, everyone has a unique set point. Now, that set point is the weight you will remember being at for a long period of time in your adult years, typically over the age of 18 or 20 when we've stopped growing and developing. Now, for some, it might be 60 kilos. For others, it might be 125 kilos. But it's that weight that you will remember being at in your adult years, and it's the weight you'll remember bouncing back to after every bout of starvation or every diet that you go on. So an example is, Paul goes on a diet, he's 120 kilos, he loses 20 kilos, he goes down to 100. Then his body's physiology is changing, biological protections are coming into play, he starts to regain the weight and he goes back to his set point. He goes back to his set point of 120 kilos. But the sad thing is, and the worst thing is, that he doesn't just go back to that. He ends up putting on a little bit of extra weight. In Australia, we call it the GST, the plus 10%. They end up putting on an extra 1 or 2 kilos, and they end up driving up their weight higher than what their set point was. And this is what I was talking about with that twins research. All you're doing with dieting is down, up, but you're driving that set point up over time. So to answer your question, the set point is unique to everybody, and it's something that your body is always protecting. And it's protecting it because it's left over from our time as hunter-gatherers, and we have our ancestors to thank for this.
Oh, okay. So it's a genetic, and it's a long-term human memory, right?
It's a long-term memory, exactly. It's an evolutionary problem. Tens of thousands of years ago, we never used to have food on every corner of every block. We used to move everywhere. And consequently, when food was available, we would gorge and we would store it. But then our body learned to shut down during times of deprivation. Now, what you're doing is putting our ancestors' genes in the modern day environment. And what is it doing? Well, it's reacting by shutting down. So when you go and lose weight, our body's shutting down because it's saying, hang on, I need to stay at the weight I am in order to procreate and survive.
Right. So, you gave this example of someone losing, let's say 20 kilos from 120 to 100 and so on. So that brings up this question to my mind. Is that people appear on the Biggest Loser shows, right? And you write in the book that, so there have been research which shows that 6 years after the program, majority of them got their weight back, and also their metabolism had messed up enough that they were burning fewer calories than even before they joined the show. So why does this metabolism, won't recover, and why is it even slower than when they started?
Yeah, look, this is another very important point, and it ties into our body's physiology. So if we think about it quite simply, now when we lose weight, we're losing body mass, we're losing fat stores and muscle stores. So consequently, our metabolism is lowering because we don't have as much body mass. Okay, we don't need to be burning as many calories. Now we can account for that as clinicians and academics. But what happens with weight loss is there's a further 15% decrease in our metabolism that we can't account for. A further 15% decrease beyond that loss of fat and loss of muscle that's just not accountable for. Now that is your body's shutting down and saying, enough's enough. I need to do all I can to prevent further weight loss, and consequently, metabolism's really, shutting its doors. Now we bring it back to the example you just gave about the Biggest Loser. Most people are familiar with this TV show that sort of went big globally. Fortunately, we're not talking about it anymore, and it's not on the screens because it was doing more harm than good. Now, what happened with these participants was there was a very clever scientist who followed them up by the name of Professor Kevin Hall. And what he did was he measured their metabolism at the start, and he measured it again at the end of the show after they'd lost that huge amount of weight. Now, again, remember, metabolism, you'd expect it had lowered because they'd lost so much weight, but it lowered by an extra 15% that we couldn't account for. But then they regained this weight, and he followed them up 6 years down the track. And guess what? They put the weight back on, but their metabolism was still dampened and was still down at the point after the weight loss. That their metabolism hadn't recovered, and consequently they continued to burn less calories at rest, which puts them in an unfavorable position because they'll continue to put on more weight than they lost. And that's what's driving that set point up over time. So your metabolism can go from 2,500 calories per day. You lose weight, it goes down to 1,600 calories. And then you put the weight back on, but it still stays at that lower number of 1,600 calories per day. It doesn't go back to 2,500. So that's not a good position to be in. And that's what's happening when we diet and starve ourselves.
Right. And you also write that it's not just metabolism, but even heart rate, breathing rate, they all decrease after we lose weight. To some extent, I can understand, but can you explain why this happens?
Yeah, everything's shutting down. Our body's basically going into protection mode. And again,
so
it's
it also
due
affects the heart and breathing, everything, right? Fundamentals, absolutely.
That's right. Our vital signs, our respiratory rate, our heart rate, our thyroid function, which is the gatekeeper to our metabolism.
Right.
In a normal, healthy condition, we're producing hormones which basically enable us to burn calories efficiently. Now, when you lose weight, the thyroid gland stops producing these hormones, metabolism goes down. But the adrenal glands, well, what do? Well, they actually pump out more cortisol. That's not good because that actually promotes weight gain. But also other things happen. We talked about the metabolism shutting down. We talked about our appetite hormones changing. Now, the appetite one's fascinating because when we get hungry, appetite hormones go up. You get those hunger pangs.
Correct.
And that's ghrelin telling you to go and reach for some food. Now, when you lose weight, ghrelin levels go up. They surge. Your body's trying to get you to eat more food.
Right.
But then not only does it go up to get you to eat more food, after you put the weight back on, the ghrelin levels stay high. They don't go back to baseline. They continue to stay high, telling you to eat more food because it wants you to put on a little bit of extra weight to prepare for that next bout of starvation. And when you look at these physiological responses that are taking place or biological protections that kick into gear with weight loss, there's actually 8 well researched pathways. Everything from the metabolism to the respiratory rate and the heart rate to the appetite hormones and the change in preference for different types of foods. So this is something we have good data around now, and it's the very reason why we're not succeeding long term on our weight loss journey.
Right, and there's also a mention in the book that that there is change even in the brain function, right? Beyond heart rate, beyond metabolism, beyond breathing rate, even brain function is altered.
It's fascinating, isn't it? I mean, we have participants coming into our clinics at the University of Sydney and RPA Hospital, and we can measure what's happening within their bodies when they lose weight. And one thing we can do is brain imaging. We can see what's happening within their brain when they're put on a diet. And what happens is their preferences for food actually change. Now, before you go on a diet, we naturally seek out, foods that are, healthy so that we can stay within a healthy weight range. But actually that changes when you lose weight. Our body actually sends signals to our brain telling you to go and reach for more high fat and more high sugar foods so that we can get
exactly those which are bad for us, right?
All those ones that are bad for us, so we can get more calories in and we can get more weight on. It's doing all it can to promote weight regain.
Right. So that brings us to, what are the 6 principles of interval weight loss plan that you describe in the book? Could you share for our audiences?
Absolutely. So the goal of the interval weight loss plan is to help people regain control of their health and weight, and to package something up that's it's easy to digest and easy to follow. And it's based on these 6 key principles or 6 key habits that you just alluded to. Now, one of them is the weight loss methodology. I talked about how we need to switch off our body's physiology and how interval weight loss works. Remember, we're getting a person to lose weight in intervals every second month. So it looks like a step-down approach. Now, that's the first principle, the weight loss methodology itself. Now, the second, third, and fourth is around food, because food is a big part of our day-to-day lifestyle. And it's clearing up all the misconceptions around food. It's not telling you to cut out carbs and all those foods that are healthy for us. It's telling you and educating you on what foods to put on into the body. And it's also telling you how you should be eating the food throughout the day. We don't need to be counting calories and meticulously weighing out grams of food and looking for obscure ingredients in the supermarket. What we need to be doing is eating from big to small throughout the day. Because again, our research has shown that you use the calories 2.5 times more efficiently in the morning versus the evening. And what I mean by that is, to explain a little bit clearer for the audience, if I sit down to 2 identical meals, but I eat one meal in the morning and measure the metabolic rate, then I eat the same meal again in the evening and measure my metabolic rate, well, it's 2.5 times faster in the morning. It's the calories you're consuming from that meal are burnt 2.5 times more efficiently. So this is the time of the day when we should be loading up and actually eating more food. But in the modern day Western environment, we have it the wrong way around. We typically have more food at the end of the day. And this is the time when we are fat promoting. Our body's not able to use the calories as efficiently. But then the program also entails exercise and sleep, because any lifestyle program, any evidence-based lifestyle program shouldn't be just tackling diet and what you should be eating and how you should be eating, but also how to get activity and exercise into your lifestyle that's sustainable, and how to make changes in your life to improve your sleep. Because these devices that we're using and are addicted to, well, they're keeping us up all night. So we need to change our current afternoon and evening time to ensure we get to sleep and we stay asleep. So the program's encompassing not just diet, but also exercise and sleep in those 6 key habits or 6 key principles.
Right. And you also, one thing that came to mind is you talked about variety of foods to be included, and also the recommendation to eat less, as the day progresses, and obviously less in the night. That reminds me that, like, in two things I was reminded of from the traditional Indian culture. One was that not the restaurant meal. Restaurant meal is never the benchmark, right? But the traditional meal used to have a variety of dishes. And especially if you ever have a chance to eat in an Indian feast, traditional feast in a temple or in a wedding or something, you would see that it was almost like a rainbow of colors and different tastes, different ingredients, and all in decent proportions. And they used to obviously eat it with rice or bread. But my father used to tell me that the emphasis was more on eating those things which are around and not so much on the rice. But now I think the eating practices have gone inverted, and we also have the country has become, and the community has also become the diabetic capital, right?
Yeah, it's an important part around variety and ensuring you have a balanced diet and choosing foods from all the food groups. We shouldn't be cutting out the carbs. We shouldn't be following low-fat diets or these high-protein diets. All of these things that we're seeing in the modern-day environment, the keto diets, the low-carb, the currents, the intermittent fasting, they're no better than any of their predecessors. All of them are achieving the same results, and that is weight loss followed by weight regain, because they're not addressing these physiological mechanisms that kick into play, or the biological protections we've been discussing. But also, they're not teaching healthy habits. They're not teaching people what they should be putting into their body for long-term health. Now, carbs, whole grain carbs, play a very important role, but so does protein, and so does choosing good sources of fat. So therefore, every meal, when you sit down, should include a source of protein, a source of fat, and a source of whole grain carb. And it's something you're alluding to. It's about variety. It's making sure that each meal is balanced. But it's not
lots of vegetables and so on. Yeah,
that's right. And it's about including plenty of vegetables, plenty of salad, and plenty of fruits to snack on, nuts and seeds, all those foods that often we've been told to stay clear from by the dieting industry. A lot of it is nonsense. It's noise. We need to re-educate ourselves and equip ourselves with evidence-based information.
Right. So one more point that you make in the book is that losing 2 to 3 kilograms at a stretch is considered clinically significant. Why is it so?
What this means is after 2 to 3 kilograms of weight loss, or about 5% of weight loss, our body starts to work differently.
Right.
It starts to, I guess, go into that shutdown mode. But it's also when you'll start to see health improvements. The cholesterol improve, the blood pressure will improve, etc. But 2 to 3 kilos is that clinically significant weight loss. And we don't want to go beyond that, because when we go beyond that, that's when our body starts to go, hang on, I've got to do something to stop this. I've got to do something to make sure I go back to my start point. So if you continued on with beyond the 2 or 3 kilos of weight loss each month, what happens is all of those physiological responses that we've been discussing kick into play.
Correct.
The metabolism shuts down, the appetite hormones change, et cetera, et cetera. So that's why we need to keep it at just 2 kilograms each month, every second month.
Every second month, yeah.
Yes, so we can prevent our body's physiology coming into play. And also remember, to answer your question, well, that's that weight loss beyond that point of 2 to 3 kilos or 5%, that's when you start to see all of those noticeable changes within your body. That's when your body starts to work differently. We have to do all we can to prevent that. And that's why we lose weight every second month. And that's why we lose 2 kilos every second month.
Great. And, some people who might have measured themselves pretty regularly would have noticed it, but you have given a very interesting insight for people who have never done that our weight can fluctuate as much as 1 to 2 kilograms in any given day, right? Whether you take it before breakfast, afterwards, after lunch, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, you're exactly right. It's an amazing experiment, interesting experiment you can actually do yourself. You've got a set of scales at home. You jump on the scales, half a dozen times a day or 12 times a day, and you'll see that huge fluctuation in your weight. It's not real changes in fat mass. It's just changes in body water content. And this is what we're getting caught up on. And this is why we should only be actually measuring our weight once per week, same time, same day. Don't worry about the day-to-day fluctuations. They don't mean anything. They're just fluctuations in body water content. What we're looking for is that trend in weight change over time, which is what the interval weight loss program prescribes.
I've done that, and I've actually seen it. This is a huge, let me put it this way, disadvantage for people who are on borderline BMI, because that, which obviously means, they may not be having the height advantage. So when they go for a checkup, that, what one measured at home and what one measures at the clinic may be different. And then you get a whole bunch of recommendations based on what they see. And usually that would have been probably, later in the morning, you're all dressed up and,
Definitely.
So from wallet to mobile phone, everything gets weighed together.
Absolutely. And also the difference in fluctuation between scales. That's why it's important to use your own scales.
Absolutely.
Same measure at home. Because, you make a very good point. You can jump on different sets of scales, different times of the day. Your weight will vary enormously, and it can vary anywhere between the sort of 1 to 2 kilos over the course of the day. It all depends on what your weight is at the moment.
Correct. So, earlier in our discussion, you mentioned about, nuts being a good source of fat and protein, but, because of the bad name they get ignored, and a lot of their calories is not absorbed. Vegetables also is the same thing, right? So could you explain both again about the vegetables and the nuts on, uncooked fruits and vegetables? How do they, why we should not be worrying too much about them while consuming them as part of our daily lifestyle?
Yes, this is a good point. I guess our fear for these foods, it has come about through the dieting industry and this whole sort of no sugar movement or low fat. Now,
low fat movement was terrible. They just put sugar back into it.
Exactly. You think about the no sugar. Now, fruits and vegetables, they contain naturally occurring sugars. Now, these foods that contain the naturally occurring sugars are also packed with other vitamins and minerals like fiber. They fill us up for long periods of time. They're very good for our health, and they actually help our waistline. They help with our long-term weight management goals. Now, they're the very foods that we should be including more of. And I'm not, basically what we're saying is all fruits and all vegetables are good. It doesn't matter if they're starchy, it doesn't matter if they're potatoes, they're all healthy. They all should go into that unlimited box or that unlimited category. But again, we've sort of developed this fear for them because of that no sugar movement and the dieting industry and the messaging they've been pushing. So every meal should actually have, on that plate should have half filled with salad or vegetables. And when you're snacking throughout the day, there's never too much fruit, because remember, we evolved to seek out these foods that are naturally high in sugar and fat to get best bang for our buck. We're going to seek them out. If you don't satisfy that craving with naturally occurring sugars like the fruits, you're only going to end up going to the vending machine, the local corner store, and satisfying that urge with a processed or packaged food that's high in added sugar. Now, the other point you make is about the high fat foods. Well, fat's not a problem. And again, a lot of these foods that are high in fat, like nuts, we don't actually absorb all the calories that are contained in that food anyway. And they're the very foods that we should be including more of in our diet and large amounts of in our diet. And we should be snacking on them regularly throughout the day. So look, this is what the IWL interval weight loss plan is also is clearing up a lot of those misconceptions around food myths. But what it is telling you is all of those foods you've been told to stay clear of, well, they're the very foods we should be sticking into our diet, putting plentiful amounts of in, and particularly when it comes to the fruits and the vegetables.
Right. What you just said reminds me of my childhood, though there were not so much of, processed and packaged foods in our life. My mother used to hear from her friends that like, hey, they're all giving some vitamins and vitamin tonics and so on and so forth. It was that era. And so she told my father that like, hey, when you take him to the doctor for fever, cold, cough, those times she will remind him. Also ask the doctor to give him vitamins. And my doctor, our family doctor, just steadfastly refused to write any prescriptions or give any vitamins. He said, just let the kids get it from, vegetables and fruits.
From their food.
So you sound exactly like that. So moving on. This is something that is, was definitely something that caught my eye, and a little bit disappointingly so to say. You mentioned that don't expect your tummies to disappear or hips to shrink from doing lots of crunches and sit-ups. So could you elaborate? Because lots of our friends are doing all of these things, and I'm sure I would like to highlight this to them.
And it's also the place we want to lose fat, right?
Exactly.
For males, it hangs around the stomach. And for women, females, it hangs around the hips and the thighs. We all want that spot
And men have
reduction.
been scared, by the medical profession saying that like yours is the bad fat.
That's right. It's that fat, the visceral fat that lies deep within the belly. It's the fat that's putting you at higher risk of disease like type 2 diabetes and heart disease.
Correct.
Now, this is just the way our bodies store fat. And as I just mentioned, for males, it's more so around the stomach, and for females, it's more around the hip and the thighs. But there's no such thing as spot reduction. You cannot zap away the fat from a specific point at a specific time. We lose weight in weird and wonderful ways, and it's lost throughout the body at different rates at different times. So 1 minute you might be seeing your stomach, so your legs, getting smaller. And then the next it could be your stomach. So what I'm saying is not all weight loss is linear, and it does not happen at the same rate across all of the body. Now, the other thing to mention and highlight is that sometimes weight loss is slow after years of dieting. And that's because we've done so much damage to our body and our body's metabolism through dieting. It's shut down. It's learned to prevent further starvation. It knows how to sort of react when you start losing weight. It gets better at reacting. And consequently, it gets harder to lose weight as we get older and with every diet that we start. So look, yeah, spot reduction is a myth. You can't lose weight in a specific spot. Eventually, the weight will come off from that area, but the most stubborn areas for men is the stomach. For women, it's the hips and the buttocks.
Right. So, we have covered a wide range of topics from your books. For the audience, for the takeaway, what would be the key points that you want them to remember about keeping the weight off over a long term?
The first thing that I hope we've educated the audience on is the dangers of dieting. Now, the next time you hear your family member or friend or colleague talk about the short-term wins they've had on that diet, whether it's the intermittent fasting or the keto or whatever it is we're talking about at the time, trust me, the research shows that they're going to put the weight back on, sadly, and they're going to end up in a worse off position than what they were before they started the diet. Dieting is only driving our set point up over time. And a lot of these diets aren't helping us form habits that last a lifetime. Now, what we know about weight loss is that it comes down to forming habits so that you're not making these drastic changes that you can't sustain. And secondly, about switching off our body's physiology. We have to do that in order to prevent that weight regain or prevent our body reacting to weight loss. So losing weight in small increments every second month is effective, and it's going to help you on your long-term weight loss journey. And the third point to emphasize is that health is far more important than weight loss. You don't need to lose the 10, 20 or 30 kilos to get to a healthy BMI range. The BMI is nonsense. It's a tool to use in I guess, the kit when we're measuring health, but it's not everything. So it's more important to look at everything else. Get your bloods checked. Check what your cholesterol is. Have your blood pressure tested by your doctor. See how healthy you are in terms of your fitness levels. Are you huffing and puffing going up and down the stairs? How do you feel from a vitality point of view? They're much better indices of your overall life and health than weight. And if you can lose a few kilos and keep it off, great. It's much better than losing 10 kilos and put 11 or 12 back on just as quick.
Thank you very much. That's a wonderful advice to take home and practice it. Thank you so much for a very detailed discussion on the topic, which is of concern to so many of us and our family members. Thanks a lot. We will look forward to your subsequent books, and we would definitely invite you back on the show. Thank you very much. And I strongly recommend Dr. Fuller's work. I've gone through his books and his writings, his blogs. They're all available for people to get good information. And I think I would strongly recommend people even to start with the blogs, and then they will be persuaded to go in depth with the books and programs and so on and so forth. This is no commercial, but I really found your blogs very informative. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Venkat. Very kind words. And look, I'm honored to be on your Move Conversations channel. So thank you once again. And for the audience, if you have questions at any time, please do reach out an email. But as Venkat just alluded to, there's a lot of information, free information on there for you to digest and to read.
Yeah, we will give the program, your links to your programs, your websites, and also to your book in the YouTube links that we write up that we would have at the bottom. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Keep healthy.
Thank you for joining us in yet another episode of Move Conversations. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Please subscribe to the Move Conversations YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get notifications of new episodes. Thank you very much. Till I see you in the next episode. Thank you very much. Have a great day.